This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. So
awesome. Well, welcome everyone to the Millcreek Business Council webinar series. Today we have Encarni Gallardo, the Executive Director of the Children's Services Society of Utah. Encarni is a leading expert in child welfare and here today to talk to us about going back to work in regards to the COVID climate in childcare, what is next and what to expect. So Encarni, we appreciate you being here and sparing some time today, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Casey, and thank you for all of you that have joined us here today. This is kind of a very dear to my heart topic. I've been in the childcare world now for over 35 years, actually. I'm dating myself a little bit, but over 35 years of working directly in the childcare world, either as an owner of a childcare center, as a teacher, as a preschool teacher, and also in the administration side now for over 20 years. So kind of very interesting to see how the pandemic has affected childcare and the workplace and the new relationship that is gonna that we're going to have moving forward when we're thinking about childcare and what families are going to need. This presentation, I hope it puts some thoughts in your mind that you can use in the future in your circles, some ideas, some resources. That's what my goal would be, but also I hope that it sparks some questions. And if you do have some questions, just please put them in the chat. Casey will be watching the chat, and we will get at the end and we will try to answer those questions. And I would like you to know that there are not any dumb question when it comes to childcare, because this might be sometimes a complicated topic, and especially if you're not very familiar with how the childcare world work here in Utah. So let's see if I can do there. I would like to start a little bit first with why childcare is important. One of the things that when we sent out the little blurb about this presentation is that childcare is an issue that affects all of us. It's not just a problem for families that need to go to work. It's also an issue for children, because children get a lot of their education in the first 5 years of life. And education meaning not the formal academic education, but a lot of the learning happens from 0 to 5. So we want to have quality, accessible childcare for these children, especially for those families that are going to work. But it's also a business issue. I mean, as an employer, and as a person that might own a business with employees, you might know that an employee that has appropriate childcare arrangements makes them a much more productive worker. This is an issue especially for mothers. I mean, families and parents and in general, but especially for mothers, because it's a way to balance the time that they have to spend between work and caregiving responsibilities, but at the same time feeling that their children are in safe spaces where their well-being is being taken care of, and that they can go to work and not be at risk of losing their jobs, because, you know, when there's no childcare, you will see that you have more absentees in the workspace. So childcare is a huge service, help to parents that are working. One of the things that sometimes we discuss is that, well, parents can stay home and take care of their children themselves, but the reality, and especially here in Utah with the increased pricing in housing, is very difficult for families to have only one working parent. So for the last 3 decades, we have been seeing an increase of families having 2 parents working, and just simply to make ends meet. This is not to have extra cash or to be able to take vacations or have a nice car. It's simply just to be able to pay for housing and their main needs. Sometimes both parents need to work. And as I was saying earlier, early childhood and education has tons of benefits for children, especially for those that are in low-income families or at-risk families. There have been a lot of research done on how children fare in school if they come from a low-income family versus a more established family. And we know that children need exposure to vocabulary, to experiences that are meaningful to them, that are enrichment experiences that make them grow developmentally appropriately for their age. So early childhood and education is very important, and more we're realizing what an important role it has in the development of a child. And I want you to notice here that I used childcare on my title, but then I use early childhood and education later on the slide. And I had this conversation recently, and early childhood education happens anywhere the child is. Not because the child is going to childcare means that they're going to be learning things there, or if it happens in a preschool, they're going to be learning things that the child is going to learn wherever they are. And children will absorb whatever is around them. So if they are in child care, that is now considered a place for early childhood education. And our goal is that those serving families and children in these settings can provide quality experiences for children. So even though I use it kind of interchangeably, so I'm not all the time using every time the same words, in my mind, when I'm talking about childcare, I'm talking about early childcare and education, both things together, if that makes sense. So a little bit about the pre-pandemic times. And Casey, you can wave to me if I need to stop and I'm around the time, because I don't have a clock in front of me. So it was very interesting that 2 years ago, we were already kind of struggling with some childcare issues in the whole country, and in Utah in particular as well. Before the COVID hit, we already were seeing a decrease of childcare services available to families. And there are there's not a research that pinpoint exactly the reason for that. And this is all over the country, and this applies to Utah as well. But the belief is that the new generation is not incentivized to enter the childcare field. The childcare field is, the childcare field is, how would I say, not a very high pay field. And most of the time, the teachers that work in childcare and preschools, they don't receive any benefits. So there is not an incentive for this new generation, this younger people in our lives to enter this field. At the same time, we're seeing more and more providers retiring because they're getting older. So there has been a huge decrease of what we are being able to access as childcare slots for children. The second and probably the biggest reason is that childcare is not affordable. In some states, childcare is more expensive than college. So it's a huge charge for families that have little kids to put a child in childcare. And when they have more than one child, they have a couple of children, like let's say they have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, the payment for childcare can reach more than a mortgage payment. It can be very easily around $1,500 a month. So think about a working family that has an average salary that cannot qualify for subsidy payments, and now they have to afford $1,500 in order to go to work. So that is one of the reasons, one of the issues that we were working with prior to COVID that was already affecting this field. And also, there's not a lot of slots here in Utah because we have only the Wasatch Front and then we have all the rural areas. There is a lack of childcare in general, especially quality childcare. Not because someone says I'm offering childcare services, a parent should send the child to that program. We in Children's Service Society and through our childcare, Care About Childcare program. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to push the puppies out. One of the things that we see is that quality is very important in order to provide those experiences for children. If you can, I just for a minute close here and put the puppies outside. I'm so sorry. Someone is at the door. I'm so
No worry, Encarni. We all know with being home and animals pop in. I have a cat that likes to jump up and kind of even step in front of my computer, step on my computer, do all sorts of funny things.
But Josie, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's been actually kind of really cool in the pandemic to get to see a glimpse of people's home life that you normally would not get to see in the office. You actually get introduced to their pets, to their kids, to their husbands, wives, roommates. So it's been kind of really fun. At least I've seen that as a positive in the pandemic, getting closer to people that you may not have that perspective with.
I agree with you, Casey.
really sorry about this. They're out now, so.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry to interrupt your conversation. So just retaking it when I left, so lack of quality of childcare in general, because childcare is not very accessible. And in Utah and in a lot of other parts of the country, there's a lack of care for children under 2. So one of the problems family find is like if I have a 3 or a 4-year-old and I have just a newborn or a baby that is 6 months old, it's very hard for them to find slots in the same program for both of them because many of our programs in Utah don't take care of children under 2. So families can struggle finding care that will kind of match the needs that they have. Let's see if I can move to the next slide. Yeah. So if we move to COVID and childcare, what happened during the COVID time? Well, many of our childcare centers and programs had to close during the pandemic because a lot of parents went to work at home and then they figured out a way of taking care of the children at home. So they were not needing, and also there was this fear of safety and physical safety and concerns from kids. As we all know, children will not be as a high risk when they may suffer from COVID, but more and more we know that later on the secondary effects of COVID in children have been seen to be very dangerous for them. So many parents were concerned that taking the kids to childcare will expose them to the virus. Also, one of the things that happened throughout the country, but especially also in Utah, there were many restrictions for providers when they decided to maintain their programs open. They restricted how many children could be in a group in the same room. They restricted how the rooms communicate with each other. They restricted the number of adults and children. So there was many restrictions in place besides the masks and sanitizing your hands and all those things. There were more physical restrictions in places that made providers have to drop their enrollment. So since December of 2020, childcare has stayed at 32% down in enrollment, and it hasn't come back. So COVID has affected financially the childcare world in a way that we do know and predict that it's not going to come back at the same level that we knew it before the pandemic. So if we were in crisis a little bit prior to COVID, I think we will see a much more difficult return once all of the restrictions are lifted. So the reality that we find now is that parents have to go back to work, and childcare is key for working parents to be able to go back to work. That's the reality. And the other reality is that many of our workers cannot stay home. Think about people working in grocery stores, or people that works on services for the community, policemen, firefighters, nurses, doctors, all those type of jobs that cannot be done from home. Those individuals are going to need childcare, some type of arrangement. many parents are being asked to come back in a hybrid model where they will have some days that they can go to work and some days that they can stay at home. And one thing that I wanted to highlight here, and I hope that any of you here that are business owners or have any power over staff members, is to remember that many of us tell our staff, no, you cannot be providing childcare while you're working, even if you're working at home. There are many companies that have in their policies, they say if you're working from home is not a substitute for childcare. And so even though they're at home, many parents can still not be taking care of their children at home. So still they might need some type of childcare. And also the one thing that we haven't thought a lot about when it comes to childcare is the irregular working arrangements. So, and there is a few research done in the last couple of years about people that use gig works like Lyft, you're a Lyft driver, or you do things at hours that, usually are not the 8 to 5 hour type thing, how those families arrange for childcare when childcare is not available, usually after 6. That's how late usually they go. So all this create a lot of disorganization in the families. They have to be constantly in a crisis mode, thinking and looking who's the next person that's going to take care of these kids. And this is not even going into how difficult it is for children when they don't have a consistent schedule, routine, and someone that is taking care of them. It creates a lot of disorganization for them as well. So according to many of the news and articles that are coming out, the childcare system is as a whole risk of collapse due to the huge economic impact of COVID. And many providers that are closing their programs, we think and we believe through all the surveys that have been done that they will not be reopening. So there is a lot of information around how could the government help childcare through these monies that they're putting forward to the states, and one of them being supporting providers to reopen, or new providers to open new programs. So that is what we are facing as we are getting out of the pandemic. We're looking at families needing more childcare in a time where childcare is really scarce right now. And we're pushing families to change again their routine that they have created into a field they're not prepared to start taking all of the children in. And also think about how unsafe many of these families feel, because they feel unsafe because we as adults have been able to get vaccines, but the children still are waiting for the vaccine to be out and available to them. So I was thinking, what would be what can employers really do about this? Well, I can tell you what we've done at Children's Service Society. And I think that it's very important that employers start thinking about their workers, because your company or your organization is as good as the people that works in it. So if the individual worker cannot find childcare, you're going to see a lot of us, they're going to be not showing up for work. You're going to have a lot of problems with the scheduling, and they're going to be unhappy and anxious. They're not going to be very productive. So one of the first thing I think is that as employers, we need to be flexible. And by being flexible, I mean we need to understand that the workers' needs might be very different from one to the next. And there will be individuals that are going to need a little bit more support in order to make this transition into work a little bit easier. And so I'm going to tell you that all the research shows that those that are the most affected are the women, are moms. So, and this affects the payment gap, the accessibility to work. I mean, childcare affects women the most. So think about how could you establish some policies that are fair to everyone, but at the same time that supports working mothers. The mothers that need childcare the most are the younger moms, because they're new in the workforce. Usually our average age of mom in the United States is around 25 years old. So think about this. This person is new in the work field. She might have a baby. Her earnings are the lowest at this time of her life because she just started working. So she cannot afford childcare on her own. And if you are talking about a single mother, then the problems multiply there. So how can you think, how can you be flexible in a way that will support your working families and your working moms to be able to access work and access childcare? I think it is important for employers to be informed of how things are going on in the state. Do you know if do you have childcare around where your company is or where your people go to work? What are their possibilities to access care around where they live or where they work? Is the childcare totally open back in the state of Utah? What are the prices of childcare? And I don't know if this will affect how you run your company, but it can affect how you provide policies and opportunities for those that work for you. Understanding the childcare system and issues in Utah is important as well. You know, rural areas, there are some areas in Utah where there's no childcare at all, while we have more concentration of care in the Wasatch Front. So understand how the childcare system works, how a provider, what a provider can offer your workers. Can you talk to one of or two programs around where you work and see if there is something that you can create that will allow your workers place their children around where they work? So there's many things you can do when you understand and you're informed. As I said earlier, an appropriate childcare arrangement creates a more productive worker, and that's just totally logic. At work, you know, if I know that my child is in a safe environment with someone that cares for him or her, that is clean, that is healthy, that he's doing things that are meaningful and that he's learning, as a parent, I can go to work with the peace of mind that during the day my kid is doing okay. If that's not the case, I'm gonna be in a state of anxiety while I work throughout the day. And talk about people that work on production lines and work that require attention, physical attention, that might be very difficult for them if they don't have appropriate childcare arrangements. The other thing is know your resources. What is out there to help you or to help your workers? So childcare, Care About Childcare, sorry, is a program that is statewide, and it has resources for parents and resources for providers. And in the resources for parents, we can help them find childcare. We can help them apply for the subsidy that the state offers to low-income parents. We can talk about Childcare, which is a program that helps parents searching for a job to pay for childcare, and also tips and resources for them to understand, you know, what are some of the normal things with kids and why they shouldn't be worrying about certain things, and how to potty train, or why do my child bite so much? So resources for them to understand child development. And I think we're at a time where we need to start thinking outside the box. We know that up to now, we have had a crisis in the childcare world, that our families cannot afford childcare in Utah. Utah is one of the most expensive states when it comes to childcare. That if you're a young parent that would like to go back to college and you have children, you might be paying more for what your childcare costs than what you're going to pay for your own college and growing as a person. And not to forget that childcare is setting up the stage for the workers of the future. So a child that has quality childcare where they learn social skills, where they get ready to go to school, if they have a good start in life, they are more likely to be away from problems with the justice system or, graduating from school. All these are research that have been done in the last 30 years, and we now know that quality childcare really impacts the outcome of a child when they become an adult. So there are many reasons for employers, for the city, and Josie, you're from the city, to look at the childcare and how can you support your childcare programs around you in the city, and at the same time how you support those that are working for you, because childcare kind of crosses all the boundaries between family issues, the community, like the cities, and the workers and the business. We just put together a report for all of the cities that you at the city. It usually goes to the mayors. I don't know who picks up the mail for them, but it's a small short report that tells you have this many programs in your city. This is how things look like. This is how many referrals we're giving out in your space. And why that is important is because if there's no care in, let's say, in Millcreek, which is very scarce in Millcreek, parents have to take those children out of the city to a different program and leave their dollars in a different place. So it has an economic impact as well for the community. So I think that is all I have for you. Don't know if you have any questions or any thoughts that you would like to share.
Thanks, Encarni. I actually have a question for you. Since working at the city level, what have you seen other cities do to help incentivize different childcare programs? What are some of the tools that they've used?
I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I think cities should keep in mind. One of them is the business license, right? Fees for a childcare program is usually not a huge money maker business, but it's a huge service for your city. So make it easier for a person that is willing to offer childcare to get through the system of getting a business license and the requirements that you might have. Maybe look at it and get an expert to look at them with you and say, this is necessary, this is not. We have worked with cities many times because the Office of Licensing required all of the programs to have a background check. And then the city were requiring them to do a background check, and they were doing the same thing twice. So sometimes look at what our barriers are. Can be very helpful, especially if someone wants to start a new business. And I think I would start that at the city level. Look at what are your requirements, especially if you have a person that wants to do it at home. Some cities have very strict number of children because they don't want a lot of traffic in city areas or zoning requirements that are very difficult to comply with. I think those are the things that I would think of when I look at this.
Thanks for sharing that. That's actually interesting because I used to be in business licensing, and I know that there are some pretty strict requirements, and some of that I think is they want to try and make sure that there's only a certain amount of adult that if there's a certain amount of children, then there have to be a certain amount of adults per child that's in that company and whatnot.
So in order for a person to get a license, they go through very, very lengthy requirements from the health department. So I think it'll be interesting to look at what they're requiring them. So it put the city at ease that those requirements are already in place. And one of the biggest concerns, I remember working with Tooele City on this one, was that they were concerned that there will be a lot of cars coming in and out of the certain spot in a neighborhood, and also the sewer implications of having a business at home, right? And the reality is that a regular family program usually can have up to 8 children, no more than that, right? So, and for the most part, you're going to have a couple of siblings here and there. So you're only talking about 2 or 3 cars coming in the morning to drop off the kids and 2 or 3 cars coming at night. So the amount of traffic is not that big. And the sheer implication, well, how many families do we have in Utah that are large families? So it's really not such a big deal. So I think the important part is to use our common sense. And I always say this when I work with cities, is like, you want your families to keep the kids around in your city. You want those dollars, you want those businesses, those jobs to stay within your limits, right? You don't want them to go outside of your limits. And when we make it hard to get a childcare license, let me tell you, those parents are going to have to find childcare somewhere else.
That's great to know. I'm definitely going to take some of this back to our team at Millcreek and chat with them about it.
The other thing that the city could do, there are some incentives from the state to start a new business, but if you guys have any pocket of money that you could offer and say, you know that the state offers some financial help to pay for licenses and health inspections and things like that, maybe the city can offer an incentive for materials or something that will be incentivized. Millcreek is, you have an older population, I think, compared to other newer cities, but childcare is needed all around. So to incentivize some new childcare providers in your area will be great.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that, because I know that we don't necessarily have set aside money for childcare, but I think that, maybe that could be something brought up with city council. I don't know if, you're welcome to, we'd love to have you come and even just bring up the topic at our city council meetings.
Yeah.
Because I think that we're not always aware of the issues. And so if you want to just email me offline, and we can even just try and bring that up as just like a topic, so that they can start thinking about like what are things that we could do as a city.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you guys need, I'll be more than happy to share the information that we have and we collect.
Fantastic.
Any other questions? And it doesn't have to be something that we spoke. If you have a question about childcare, if I am able to answer, I'll be happy to.
Okay, I have a question. Does the state have any money to incentivize businesses to add this as a incentive or a benefit to their companies?
Very good question. That I don't think that I am aware of that there is any specific incentive to businesses to support childcare for their workers. Not that I know of, and I might be wrong, but I haven't heard of any. Mostly because private businesses, the state tries to stay out of those, how you manage them. I have to tell you that as a business leader, childcare is very central to my thoughts when it comes to benefits. We have around 40 employees, and we have 3 males in our staff. The rest of the 3 or 4 males in our staff, and the rest are females, and many of them, at least 50% of them, are mothers with children in ages that will need some type of care. And I know that if I could figure out a way to provide some type of incentive for childcare, that I will be supporting my workers at a very high level. I want to share with you, Sherry, that in a recent research that has been done, a global research, the United States is the country that invests the least when it comes to childcare services. I think it's 0.5% investment in early childhood programs. I think other countries have figured out that when you can take care of the little kids, the parents do better at work. and have a more healthier system for that. And I hope that the United States start, stepping up to the plate for, working families.
That's too bad that we are in that situation when it's so important for everybody to do that. Because it seems like to me that if you were a big corporation, we've all figured out that we can work from home now, so you can add flex time or flex work to that. But it's sad that not more of them offer childcare, because that would be a big support to working moms, young, middle age, whatever it is that you need, and not so that they're not penalized for having a family and being maybe the only supporter of that. So I think that's somebody or somewhere, something needs to be brought up somewhere inside the government and the business to partner or collaborate together to try to get this done. So
I totally agree, and I am a little bit of a squeaky wheel everywhere I go about this, because it's very important in very different ways, because I tend to focus on my working families and how important is childcare for working families. But think about this, how important it is to have a well-prepared foundation for this new generation to become good citizens and workers in the future. And we don't look at that because we don't see the return of that until it's 2021, 25 years later. But when we get a child in when we put a child in a childcare program where they're exposed to things that spark their curiosity, that make them learn their language faster, that they're much more prepared to enter kindergarten and all those things, we're putting the building blocks of a life of success in the future. And we don't think of that, but I think, and this might be a little bit an older research from Chicago, Illinois, that came out of Chicago, that said that the return of investment on early childhood is $17 per dollar. That's huge, $17 per dollar that we invest in early childhood later on in life, because we have less issues with juvenile, crime. We have less issues with children dropping off the schools early. That type of thing costs the community a lot of money. When a child grows into being a teenager that drops out of high school or that gets into trouble, we are paying those services as well. Well,
So my thoughts are maybe there could be more collaboration within the business parks and the companies that are within the business parks to work together to find space now that we have the subleasing of space and stuff. And maybe, pardon me. So maybe that's a thought that, I don't know, I'll have to ask some of my business parks and see, but I think that maybe if we're looking towards the future and we have subleasing space, that maybe they can add a piece of that to their rent or something. And then, I don't know, there needs to be a company that's willing to come in there to run that, right? But it seems to me that a collaboration of that kind of sort would benefit everybody and wouldn't as cost the individual businesses as much if they provided something at a business park or somewhere near there. So just a thought.
That is a great thought, Cherry. And that is one of the ways to go, because I know, and I'm originally from Spain, and in Spain, a lot of businesses kind of work something like that, and they count that money that they put towards childcare is called community investment, and that money is a tax perk to them, because it's like a donation, it's a community investment, it's an investment, and so there is, and it's been so long that I've been here and I don't know the words very well, but it's like they are reinvesting some of their dollars into the community, and that gives them some perks when it comes to taxes. So I think there's a huge conversation around this that I'm going to tell you it's not going to happen from the top down. It's going to have to happen from us, from the ground here, and kind of raising the voice and say we need to start thinking, how do we support our children at their early years and how we support our working families a little better.
Well, I think that the cities are all going to receive some kind of pocket of COVID money. I wonder if there's anything there that we can do to incentivize businesses to start some kind of coalition or some kind of thought on this to help working mothers come back and reintegrate into the workforce. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you said it, working mothers are going to be the hardest, the one that will have the hardest time to come back to work.
Yeah, I know that Millcreek is trying to be a very child friendly and family friendly community and workplace. And so I know that I've heard some of our leaders starting to try and think about ways that we can make it for our staff. And I'm hoping that that will spread, we can spread to trying to talk to like business owners and things we can do. And, I can always, like, we've got a lot of really great legislators that we could reach out to even just see if they're, I know that they tried to build this last time, but maybe if we keep pushing and trying to get things like that out there, we can get some pockets of money that could be used from the state to help communities.
Well, as I said at the beginning, if I can just spark some thoughts today, that would be my goal, is to just kind of get you going and thinking on what is your part in this whole conversation.
Fantastic. Well, you definitely sparked a lot of thoughts for me, Encarni, and since I do work for municipal government, I'm going to definitely be taking some of these thoughts back to Mike, our assistant city manager, and I know that he's very open to those ideas, and he also is a legislator, so he wears two different hats. So I can take these things back to him, and maybe we can get some more conversations sparked on a couple of different levels.
Very good. That would be great. Any final thoughts? Any other things? Well, I don't know if Casey, if you can put on the chat my name and contact email. So if anybody wants to email me after this, or if you have further questions, we do have a whole crew of people working at the Care About Childcare program that have tons of information, resources that, if it's specific to something that you would like to do, I can connect you with them. But if it's more like this type of conversation that you would like to kind of go a little bit deeper into it, I'd be more than happy to do that.
I will definitely be in touch from Millcreek. So
I'll be waiting for that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thanks, Casey, for helping to moderate the chat and whatnot. I think if we don't have any other questions, we can move towards to closing the webinar. What are your thoughts, Casey and Encarni?
I think that works well. If there's anything additional, Josie, to add about upcoming events for Millcreek, other ways to get involved with the Millcreek Business Council, and again, to continue the conversations, because these webinars are meant as an opportunity to spark future engagement and curiosity and decision making within our business leaders. And so if you have something that you're interested in discussing or presenting, getting involved with Millcreek, I didn't know if we wanted to present a little bit more of how to get involved with the Business Council.
Yeah, so if you want to be part of the Business Council, just shoot me an email, which I sent all of you who had registered. You should have my email. Just give me an email and let me know if you want to be involved more. And we have several different committees. We have our networking committee, we have a business promotion committee, a healthcare committee, and these different committees put on different events. We have job fairs, we have cleanup activities, we did an Earth Day event, and we do these webinars, and we just would love to spark conversation for our business community and get the word out there. And if there's something that any business owners want to focus on, just let me know, and it'd be great. So we've got our meet and eat coming up this next week on Tuesday. It's from 11:30 to 1, and it's a networking lunch that'll be at Citrus Grill. So I think that's everything. We'll go ahead and close the recording then.